Teaching with the Smithsonian. Montgomery College videos are a collection of interviews with Montgomery College Smithsonian faculty fellows, sharing how they engage and empower students while exploring the complex challenges of the 21st century, such as climate change, social justice, and pandemics. Fellows offer concrete examples of how to work remotely with the Smithsonian, artifacts, and resources. The work is adaptable for high school and college audiences. Be sure to visit their linked resources.
My name is Professor Brandon Wallace. I'm an associate professor at Montgomery College, and I'm a first-generation graduate of college myself. One of the things that I love about me in education is that I started as a middle school teacher in Baltimore City at Chinkapin Middle School, and then I transitioned to a high school teacher and department chairperson in Baltimore City Public Schools at the National Academy Foundation High School, and many years later, I became an associate professor here at Montgomery College. So some of the courses that I teach here at Montgomery College is Education 101. It's a foundational course in education, and Education 201, which is an introduction to special education, as well as many other education courses right here at Montgomery College. My project for the Smithsonian was, I think, super interesting, primarily because I was able to go on a global ride throughout my Smithsonian fellowship experience. In short, some of my students here in Montgomery County, Maryland, were able to create video vignettes to teach students in the United Arab Emirates, specifically around global warming and globalization. One of the resources that I used from Smithsonian was a learning lab, wherein my students here at Montgomery College were able to access some really incredible resources that helped them create even more dynamic lesson plans, by which they took those plans and created those video vignettes to teach students in the United Arab Emirates. Some of the student outcomes I expected were pretty rudimentary when it comes to the Education 101 Foundations course that the students were in. Essentially, I wanted them to get a chance to teach other students, but more importantly, connect with different diverse cultures. And so I really wanted them to have some outputs where they had of course, creative lesson plans, but also creative lesson plans with some universal design elements in there. So a few things around multiple means of representation, a few things around multiple means of action and expression, and a few things around multiple means of engagement. That was really important. So to take some of the foundational coursework that we were doing in Education 101 and see it come alive for those students that my students were able to teach in the United Arab Emirates was pretty cool. Some of the new resources that I learned, specifically around the Smithsonian Fellowship, were presented by the presenters in a lot of ways. And so in as much as they showed us a lot of the online fun resources to use in our practice, one of the things that I really benefited from was the wealth of knowledge, specifically from everybody really who taught us some of those Smithsonian Museum tidbits and tricks of the trade, if you will, primarily because there's such a wealth of knowledge, human capital, to speak to a lot of the artifacts happening at the Smithsonian, which really did well for me to kind of take that information and bring it right back to the students that I serve at Montgomery College. My students have been impacted greatly by the Smithsonian in a myriad of ways, but one way in particular is they were able to become teachers. And so for the first time in many of their lives, they had to create a lesson plan, embed specific universal design elements into that lesson plan, and deliver it with a sense of expertise, but also a sense of passion. And so that was really rewarding to see, actually. I have a lot of student projects that stand out to me, but one or two in particular. One student did a really good job of taking it outside into her community. And so not only did the students get to learn about globalization, but they got to learn about globalization in Maryland, right in the backyard of one of my students. And another student who I was super proud of had limited English proficiency and ended up translating a lot of his work in his native tongue. And so it was really cool to see one of my students have an entire lesson plan done in Spanish and then translated in English for the students in the United Arab Emirates. There were a few unexpected outcomes for my students. One is I think that they gained so much confidence. And I know we talk about soft skills and power skills, but my students, at large, they got so much more confidence. The presentations weren't done until the end of the semester. And just to see the transition of nervous young people start off with no, like a tabula rasa, blank slate of not knowing how to create a lesson plan, how to deliver a lesson plan. It really gave my students confidence and a lot of other power skills, soft skills that they can use specifically around public presentation and also pacing, which is important, especially in schools of education. Doing this work of the Smithsonian has changed me as an instructor in many ways, but one of the ways that it's changed me is that I grew into becoming a more collaborative teacher. And so, even in the midst of COVID-19, it was really important that I connect with some of my old friends and colleagues who are doing the same types of work. And so, typically, I kind of go at it myself, uh, as a teacher ought to, in many ways. However, it was really, really rich and strong, the collaborative experiences that I've had with folks from the Smithsonian, folks at Montgomery College, but also my partners in the United Arab Emirates to really tell me a little bit more about culture, but also to enrich the collaborative experiences that I had to have if I was going to make this project to be successful. One of the things that forced me to be creative, especially in my Smithsonian Fellowship experience, was this nimbleness that I had to have. COVID-19 was overtaking the country. It was a lot of, there's still questions, right? But there were a lot of questions and uncertainties when it first began. And so, how do you take a design project that was supposed to be in person and flip it so that it's 100% virtual, 100% digital? That was a heavy feat. However, with the support of my Montgomery College family, my Smithsonian family, I really felt like the ultimate goal was still achieved in a rich, right way. I did not know how nimble I could become as a professor. I did not know how to troubleshoot as fast as I did. And also, as you probably are well aware, United Arab Emirates is on a totally different time zone, the United States of America, especially the Eastern Standard Time. And so just figuring that out was an unexpected outcome so that I can have a little bit more ease and grace when it comes to developing assignments, but more importantly, developing assessments for my students that we might be able to measure what they know, especially from the coursework that they've recently come out of. Assessing this project was fun, actually. The students helped me create the rubrics, and the progression language was created by the students also. And so it was really interesting when I asked students how would they like to be scored, especially because it was such an unorthodox transition from having to first do it face to face, and now we have to kind of record videos and ship them over to the United Arab Emirates and things like that. And so my students helped me create the rubric for the assignment, actually. And I'm gonna be honest with you, they are pretty tough. So the initial rubric that I had not at all the progression language, the domains, the points, the deductions, and things like that. But one of the things I really appreciated was the authenticity of the rubric, primarily because it was created by the students. The students had a voice and how they wanted to be assessed, and it made sure that we were all on the same page, especially in terms of like what looks like quality deliverance, if you will. And so that was a really cool, unexpected outcome also, wherein the students helped me create the rubrics by which they were scored and assessed. It's super important. I know I said this before, but I'm going to say it again. It's super important to be nimble and to not marry yourself to any one idea, but allow yourself to enjoy the journey and also allow yourself to listen to your colleagues, to your peers, to friends, to family members, anybody who's going to listen to your project ideas, because you just be surprised about how many more really good embedded ideas you can get just by crowdsourcing other people's ideas and opinions. I'm fellowship crazy now. I've fallen in love with fellowships because of the collegiality, because of the camaraderie. And so I'm actually in a whole brand new fellowship. And I do have the Smithsonian Fellowship to thank because I really didn't understand the constructs of fellowship. It just felt like more work, but it really has led to some rich relationships that I still have to this day, and also some rich work that I was able to produce. You think about 21st century skills and what's needed for especially this generation coming up. I think that this project was super important because it utilized technology. It also utilized judgment and analytical skills. They had to present an oral style. And so there's a lot of skills enveloped in this one project. But I think that one of the things that I was most impressed with is that my students were able to be just as nimble as I was. Sometimes students have problems recording things. Sometimes students have problem uploading things, and they would consult me. They would go on YouTube. They would figure it out, which is a 21st century skill that every employer would need to have. Some of those transferable skills that I know my students were able to gain are critical thinking for sure. How do you decide what content is most critical and most important for these students in the United Arab Emirates? Other speaking skills, because they had to record themselves. And it took a couple of times. Some of my students would send me some of their rough drafts materials, and I would hear too many ums or too many ahs or too many likes. And so it was really good to have a revisionist kind of construct with this project. And another last skill is students' ability to really listen to each other, because another component was sharing the presentations and commenting through Blackboard, our learning management system. And so one of the things that I loved was the other students in the class being able to see their peers in rare form as teachers too. So that was really special. It's important to have an overview of what research is. And so we had an entire, and this is an Education 101 class, right? We had an entire didactic on keywords, what words to stay away from, just a lot of different operators of Boolean and such, where I had to kind of reteach that and share with students that it's always a good practice to, of course, start with the learning lab, but also triangulate your research. And so make sure that you have corroboration from maybe Google Scholar or our library system here at Montgomery College. And so those were all opportunities where learning still was increasing as the project was ensuing. Some of the basic elements of the project were my Montgomery College students would explore the learning lab. And then my Montgomery College students would explore how to make lesson plans. And also they would explore already created lesson plans. Then my Montgomery College students developed lesson plan openers. Sometimes in different local education agencies, they're called do nows or warm ups. And so with those openers, it really introduced the global idea of global warming and things like that. And then the Montgomery College students recorded openers for those United Arab Emirates students. And then the students were able to view those Montgomery College students' work and offer some feedback. And so that's a very simple cycle of how the project kind of happened. If he was here today, I think that he would be blown away just by cell phones right now, but blown away by the audacity of my students to want to become such diverse educators, global educators, and for them to have walked into a community college at 17, 18, some were 16, and to be able to develop an entire lesson plan opener, deliver the lesson plan opener with conviction, with confidence, in a very short amount of time. 8 weeks, the course is 16 weeks, and we started this about 8 weeks in. And so it wasn't a lot of time, but it was just enough time to create an impact globally. And so I think that he would be pleased and impressed. And I also think that he would be wowed away by what we think students can't do until we give them supports and the scaffolds that I know that they need in order for them to be their best selves. It was really interesting to see my students connect with their United Arab Emirates students on many different levels. One of the levels was that they were able to just see these students. So oftentimes, especially during COVID-19, my students couldn't do the field experience. And field experience is another course wherein students kind of get to see and work with other young people. And so this was an added opportunity for them to touch the lives of other young students, and not even students in the United States of America. So that was really cool. Another cool thing was, in order for my students to be effective, in teaching the students from the United Arab Emirates, the elementary school students there, they had to understand the culture. And so a lot of the students didn't understand why they had homogenous groups. So why are all the boys in one group or in one classroom and why all the girls in another group or classroom? And so we had to do some unpacking of culture. And so I think that it led to a greater appreciation of culture, but more importantly, I think that it led to a greater appreciation of when you become a public school teacher, you don't get to pick and choose which students you're going to pick and choose. You get to teach all students, and that's the pride and the joy of public education in this country. But also, it's something that I really want my students to understand and to know before they become teachers of records in the future. I think that the Learning Lab is one of those special resources that allows people, students, anybody to get to good resources, get to good knowledge, but also something that I loved about the Learning Lab is that it is super user friendly because, in as much as I like technology, I'm not always great at it, but also it is brilliant because you get to save resources, to hold and to keep. You get to share resources right there on the same site. You get to print resources and things like that. You can add to a collection. So it's a really great massive amount of information. But the cool thing is when you get to any specific resource, you have the opportunity to save it or you have an opportunity to share it immediately. And I think that that's one of the things that keeps the collection accessible is that there's a lot of opportunities where, of course, you can search for hours and hours and days and probably months and years. But in terms of capturing that really good resource or capturing that evidence, it's imperative, especially with that Learning Lab site. And so I really, really enjoyed using it. I still use it sometimes. And my hope is that a lot of my students, again, many of them have graduated, at least moved on and moved forward. But my hope is that a lot of them are still accessing it primarily because the Learning Lab wasn't just for education one-on-one, right? It's a really good resource that regardless of your discipline or your major, you can utilize it because it's super easy to use and it's super rich to have. Initially, when I designed the project, I wanted all my students to work by themselves, primarily because I wanted them to get the idea of what it takes for a singular teacher to create a lesson plan opener and to really synthesize the materials from a lesson plan. I had one student, Kiera, who came to me and she had made a little friend, and this is a totally online course too. She had made a friend online through the course, through some Blackboard chats and things like that. And they came to me and they said, Professor Wallace, I want to work with a friend. And at first I was very staunch. I said, no, 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 no. We all have to do it separately, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like that, the professor that I am. And then I thought about it and I allowed them to work together. And when I tell you that it was so rich and so engaging and so fun to see these two co-teachers in many ways bounce ideas off of each other right there on the recording. It was pretty magical. And so this project allowed for students to have voice and also to propose certain things that I had never even thought of. And so that's another really good added piece to this project, students having voice and having agency in how they would like to learn, but more importantly, how they would like to show what they know. Because of the Smithsonian Fellowship, I've had a lot of really good, rich, extraordinary relationships form. So oftentimes, especially as an only other, I'm usually the only young African American male in meetings and in college, contexts. It becomes kind of lonely, and so the Smithsonian Institute and the fellowship really allowed me to connect with like-minded peers, connect with like-minded colleagues. And one of the things that I really enjoyed is those continuing relationships. And so there's a few friends that I actually met in the fellowship. And so we've been friends ever since. And I believe we're going to be friends hereafter, primarily because of that experience as a Smithsonian Fellow, but more importantly, by the connectedness of the passion to create more and to become better professors and to become better teachers and thinkers and creators. And so that's one of the things that I really appreciated that I didn't expect was the rich depth of the relationships that were cultivated during the Smithsonian Fellowship period. And so I'm really grateful for that. One thing that I would add, if I were to recreate this project, is I would not just want to do the United Arab Emirates. I would want to find a friend or a colleague in another country, in another school context, so that my students could have another global opportunity to connect with other students around the world. And so I would love to increase the countries that we worked with in the future.
This video was produced by Montgomery College Television on behalf of MC's Paul Peck Humanities Institute and Smithsonian's Office of Educational Technology. It is a companion to the Smithsonian's X-Course, Teaching with the Smithsonian, addressing 21st century challenges in the community college classroom. Learn more about this course at edx.org. Faculty interviewed for these videos teach at Montgomery College, a community college in suburban Maryland, just a subway ride from the Smithsonian Museums on the National Mall. Our MC Smithsonian Faculty Fellowship has spurred more than 25,000 visits by students and their families since 1998. Find our other faculty video interviews at youtube.com/Montgomery College.